Welcome to Alaska. Here's $1,000.
Well, it's about time. But why?
We pay every resident $1,000 to allow the oil companies to ravage our state's natural beauty.
I'm home.
Oh, thanks.
We're back. I'm here with Jesse Myerson, Catherine Rampell, and Josh Barro. That is a real policy in Alaska. Alaskans collectively own the oil wealth of that state. They lease it out to private resource companies that take it out of the ground, and then they get a benefit, and they cut a check to every Alaska resident every year.
That's right.
And this is basically, it's the closest thing we have in the States to what is known by economists as a universal basic income.
Yeah, so it's paid for by this thing, the Alaska Permanent Fund, which basically is just like any pension fund or hedge fund or whatever. There's a fund manager, and they invest passively in stocks and bonds, and then they just pay a dividend to everybody. And there's, you know, the distance between the people managing firms in the United States and the people who actually own them is so great that basically anybody could own the firms and just let them be. So if we just had a big fund that paid dividends to everybody, it wouldn't really affect.
Okay, so just slow that down for a second, right? So the idea here is you have the government own portfolios, right? Essentially have the government invest in the stock market. This is known in other countries as sovereign wealth funds, and it's super common across the world.
It is common across the world. It's more common in places where you have abundant natural resources.
Yep.
It's,
like Alaska, for instance.
Yeah, it's much more difficult to do if you're running a deficit.
Yep.
And
a trade deficit.
Budget.
Fiscal deficit.
A fiscal deficit.
Yeah.
A budget deficit, yeah. I mean,
well, no one else
need
has
money to buy
American
the stocks.
reserve
yeah, you need,
currency.
exactly.
Right.
You need the money to buy the stocks.
And that's why it tends to build up in places like Norway and other folks. They accrue all these assets because they're like, we're selling you our oil, and now we've got these bucks here sitting in their bank account. What do we do with them? Oh, let's invest them in a portfolio.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the other one of the risks, you know, we've been talking about like what kinds of places do this, but one of the risks is like how do you promise budget projections basically based on stock market investments and things like that. I mean, this has been a huge problem for pensions.
Right.
I think that there's a big risk in taking this at a more global scale.
So the downside danger would be, okay, we think our fund's going to perform at 6% year over year, and we're going to budget out our costs at that, and then
it's very hard to find low risk investments
right.
for this kind of purpose.
Right. But the flip side of it with Alaska, right, is this idea of this check to everyone, which does seem so sort of anathema, so un-American, right? So ridiculous that you would just write people checks. But the idea of the government just writing people checks has this very long conservative heritage.
Right, and the idea is that this is a substitute for other welfare programs that is advantageous in that, for example, it doesn't go away if you work, so it doesn't discourage people from working. It would also tighten up labor markets. The checks that are envisioned in these programs would be a lot bigger than the Alaska check, which is about $1,000 or $1,500 a year. It would, for example, be a poverty level income for everybody, so that it would theoretically give you the option not to work, or in a two-parent family, maybe one parent would choose not to work.
Wait, you're telling me that, so just so this is clear, because I want people to understand this idea, right? The idea is that the government writes people a check for, say, $20,000 a year because you're an American citizen, and that's basically what we're saying is a minimum to get by. That sounds, to the people listening to that right now, to a lot of them, crazy.
Well, so part of why I like this idea, and I like the land value tax idea in Jesse's piece that might pay for it, is that Jesse says he's a communist. I view these as neoliberal ideas that would allow the government to engage in redistribution of income without really managing the economy. You can let employers do what they want. You can let people decide what kinds of jobs that they want to take, and these programs exist to ensure that they have a decent standard of living regardless of how the private economy works.
So let me give an example, then I want Jesse your response. So we have all these programs, like we're talking about food stamps, right? We're talking about LIHEAP, which our own reporter Ned Resnikoff did some great reporting on cuts too. That's money to buy heating fuel, right? We have we have Section 8 housing vouchers, right? There's all different programs we have in the safety net. There are conservative Milton Friedman said, just get rid of all that stuff, give people money, let them do with what they will.
Yeah, I mean, it's a decent idea. You couldn't get rid of the whole welfare state, and it would be good to have like a series, like a tiered system. A guy, Matt Brunig, who I'm friends with, who's a Demos blogger, has a wonderful piece about a tiered system where you could retain, for instance, disability payments, give an extra universal basic income to parents so that they could pay for their kids, and really what this could do is ennoble and dignify the work that we don't consider work in the country, like child rearing and domestic work, and typically women's work that is invisible and uncompensated, and this can allow people to do that work and still be able to survive.
My big wrap on this is the fact that what I liked about this piece is that the big thing that looms over American economy right now is the labor market's broken, and we have too many people in poverty, and that should be the thing. Whatever they're coming from the left or right, that's what we need solutions for. Jesse Myerson from Rolling Stone, Catherine Rampell from New York Times, Josh Barro from Business Insider. All in for this evening. Rachel Maddow Show starts right now. Good evening, Rachel.
Good evening, Chris. Thanks very much, my friend.